Hi everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Mapperton Live Extra.
How's my hair?
It's good,
Is that
brilliant.
okay? Because often the cameras start rolling and then she says, your hair, it's a mess.
Yeah, I think my hair is the one that's a mess today. But no, your hair is looking great.
But this is a slightly challenging episode because I don't know what's going to happen.
That's right.
Julie just said, why don't we do an episode where we sit down in front of the fire and you know nothing and I'm just going to ask you questions.
Yeah. So I'm going to interview Luke because actually there are things I want to know.
So this is a little nerve-wracking.
No, and I think you'll all want to know as well. But sometimes with Luke, you're so busy that actually when we do these Mapperton Live Extras, I actually learn quite a lot of what's going on. And it's only when we're filming the episodes, I'm like, really?
It's true.
That's happening. It's so true.
We do have the same lives in many respects, but they're also sometimes quite separate. And the same way that Julie learns about me from these episodes, I learn about her from social media. I didn't know she was going off to Kenya. No. I didn't know she was in Italy. I look on my phone, I look over in the house, she's not there. Oh, she's sitting next to a lion. Oh, she's in a fantastic cheese shop. Oh, so, you know.
That is such an exaggeration.
Only a little bit, though.
No,
only a little bit.
Anyway, this is about you now.
Wait. So, if I don't want to answer the questions, what do I do?
No, you're going to want to answer them because I'm going to narrow it into questions around running an estate in the 21st century and kind of the changes that you've seen from when you were younger and when you didn't have the responsibility and to now that you do have the responsibility. And I know we have it together, but technically this is your family home. This is your family history. I add a little bit of something, but
this is feeling like an episode of American Countess, your other channel. You can see that I'm stalling because I'm slightly nervous about what she's going to say. But in the meantime, there's a really important thing that we haven't said, which is 50% of people watching this episode have not subscribed to our channel. Did you know it was that high?
Yes, I did.
It's unbelievably high number.
I watched YouTube.
So why wouldn't you press that subscribe button?
Subscribe, but also turn notifications on because then you'll somewhere around. But turn notifications on because then you're the first to know when this video premieres or when the next video premieres. We're always premiering videos, and of course then they stay on the channel. But it's nice when a video does premiere. We're there chatting with everybody during the premiere. It's fun. There's a huge community now. Wherever we are.
Quite often we're out.
Kenya
and
lion in the background.
Italy. I'm sort of at home reading the paper and twiddling on my phone, answering questions, which is a delight. Let's get on to your first question.
Let's get to the interview. So, I think for me, first and foremost,
how many questions are there going to be?
There's going to be 5. So there's going to be 5 questions. Okay. So try not to make them too long-winded because we know Luke can kind of.
Is this?
Don't worry, because I'm the presenter, the host of this. I'll be able to rein him in, shut him down when I want to go on to that next point. So I think first and foremost, the question that I have for you is you obviously grew up knowing that one day you would be taking over Mapperton Estate. But during that period, when you were at school and you went off to university, was it in the back of your head thinking, one day I'm going to have to take this over and I'm going to have to run it and these are the things I want to do? How did it feel growing up knowing that one day you would be, in charge?
Yeah, that is a really interesting, loaded, multifaceted, complicated question. And I think it's an important one. The truth is that growing up, you do become aware of these things, probably aged around about 10, 11, 12. And that was the point, I think, when I saw my parents starting to take on responsibility and I saw how it was impacting their careers and they were needing to do more down here as my grandfather was slowly needing to hand things over. So I would say that it absolutely affects one's sense of one's future. And for me, if I'm completely honest, I'd always had a sense that Mapperton was a struggling estate, that it was very hard to make the estate support itself, sustain itself, because incomes had dropped and dropped and dropped through all the traditional sources, in particular agriculture, and that it was going to be really hard going. And so I felt a kind of obligation to try and go out in the world and do my own thing before taking on Mapperton. And so I also had a sense of there being a kind of first part to my life which wasn't Mapperton, and then there would be a part of my life that was dominated by Mapperton. I think we're in the dominated part now, aren't we?
Yes.
But that first part, it meant I wanted to kind of pack in things that I knew I wouldn't be able to do. And so I was interested in doing things that interested me, you know, the businesses that I was involved in, the film school that I ran. And so I tried to pack a lot in before the responsibility came my way.
Yes.
I don't know whether, does that answer? But I think the really interesting is how I felt. And I think I felt a bit daunted. And I think I felt as though I knew it was going to be difficult. So you weren't looking forward to it, would you say? I mean, to be in all honesty. I don't think I was particularly looking forward to it. I knew that it was an immense privilege and how lucky I was to have such a wonderful place to live. But I don't think I was looking forward to it in that sense, that there was a kind of golden moment when I was going to take over Mapperton. Right. Because I knew it was going to be incredibly hard work. Yeah. And guess what? It's incredibly hard work. It is. I mean, I think it's harder than probably you and I ever imagined. I know for me, definitely, as the American marrying into the family, I've personally, and of course it's naive of me to think this, but it's, I didn't grow up here. And so you have these, in your imagination and what you see on TV, this story being told that it's all blissful and perfect and your hair looks perfect all the time. But I think what we need to do here is sort of roll the clock back, because there certainly was a golden era of living in country houses, a sort of Edwardian period when quite a lot of families lived pretty luxurious lifestyles with lots of staff, and the heads of the families, the heirs, often didn't have to worry too much about making ends meet, because there was quite a lot of income coming in from all of the different parts of the estate. And I think one of the things I was also very conscious of was that we had lost our family home and estate in Cambridgeshire. That my grandfather had been forced to sell that after the war because things were so difficult. And therefore I had a sense that had happened before, and we really didn't want that to happen anymore. We didn't want to lose any more than we'd already lost, because Mapperton is much, much smaller, and we've lost lots of furniture and pictures, and the amount of land here is very, very considerably less. And so there's this sense of really trying to hold on to what's left, which is part of why we do this. Yes, that's exactly right. No, it's so that was one question. Okay, was four more. That was quite long-winded, wasn't it? No, it was really brilliant.
Did you learn anything? Yeah, I did. It's okay for me to feel, this is, walking in here sometimes and seeing the leaks and just saying, good grief.
We can get a bit overwhelmed.
Exactly.
Truth. Yeah. So, and it's also true that we live here in a way that is quite different to how these places would have been lived in 100, 200 years ago. Even Mrs. Labouchere in the 20th century, first half of the 20th century, she lived here and she had responsibilities, but I imagine that quite a lot of her time was spent doing things that were actually. Mrs.
Labouchere was Luke's grandfather after he sold Hinchingbrook. He bought Mapperton.
So the previous owner to our family. Yeah. I imagine she had quite a lot of time to do things that interested her. And actually, the truth is that while Julie and I are here, 95% of the time we are working on one thing or another. We are. There are some fun bits too.
Of course there are. I'll get onto that in a second. So, second question is, so all of a sudden you've taken over, your parents have transitioned and handed over the management of the estate. Did you have an idea as to, and this is pre-pandemic, so because there's going to be two questions here. Pre-pandemic, did you have an idea as in any stretch of the imagination that you wanted Mapperton to stand out, or you wanted to make it different, or did you feel like you're just going to do what was necessary for now to get your head around it in order just to keep it going as is? Or did you have a great vision?
That's another really good question. And I think it's a bit of both. But one thing about me is that I've always in my career been involved in growing things. So I'm not really interested in things that stand still, which probably means I take on a bit more risk because I want things to evolve. I want to invest and start new things. But I think in Mapperton's case, it's been absolutely essential. I mean, the moment these houses and these estates stand still, they're essentially sinking. And I think that I was always aware that we needed to kind of innovate and come up with creative ways of standing out and doing things differently. So when I first came here, I realized that actually there was one area where we just weren't very strong, and yet we had massive potential, and that was weddings. And weddings have been a real help, a real bonus for lots and lots of country houses, because the income can be quite substantial and really, really can help support these places. And that will continue. But weddings are becoming more competitive. You're now allowed to get married not just in licensed places, but anywhere in the countryside, or at least that's coming along.
Yeah,
and that means that we can't just think about traditional sources of income like weddings. Agricultural income for us is very, very limited. Residential income from the properties, there's so much investment in these houses that's required that again, it's not that much. So we did have to come up with some big new ideas. I'm not going to go into those big new ideas, but that's also more fun.
It is definitely more fun. So we arrive, 5-6 years ago, and we start to sort of run the place. But our kids were younger then, and so I was mostly in London, and you were coming back and forth up and down to London. And then fast forward, and we were doing, we were trying to grow the wedding business. You put in a new road so that people wouldn't go down the main drive. We obviously, if you've watched the video of our restoration story in 20 minutes. So there were improvements, and with the help of grants, we were able to, of course, restore the coach house, which became our event space and cafe. But then all of a sudden, so we were taking along doing these things and growing where we could traditionally. And when I say traditionally, having the cafe, having the shop, having an event space, doing weddings. And then all of a sudden the pandemic hit. And I think for you and I, that was quite a shock. So my question to you is, when the pandemic hit and we were here and we had no visitor income, all weddings were canceled, what was going through your head during that period of, this unknown period where no income is coming into the house and gardens?
I was quite miserable. I thought we were going to be in serious trouble because we have this team of staff that rely upon the income that we were getting from visitors and weddings, and yet we had no visitors and we had no weddings. And so we were facing this really terrible period of thinking that we might have to make staff redundant because we wouldn't be able to afford to pay their salaries. Luckily, we didn't have to do that for the most part because the government stepped in and supported people's salaries in this country through something called the furlough scheme. So that meant that we were able to keep going. And but it was a really worrying time. But I think what often happens when you have these big shocks is that it forces you into a position of thinking differently. And I think we have thought differently, but maybe I'm not allowed to go there.
No, so that leads me on to my next question. And so obviously we're here, we're talking on camera. We've got Stephen and Claire there. We're this is going to be premiered and it will stay on our YouTube channel. During the pandemic, we started to do live tours every Tuesday at 4:00 UK time with myself, my father and mother-in-law, and Luke was doing the camera, and we would have a child usually doing the sound. And every Tuesday throughout, in particular that first lockdown, up until July, so basically from April, I think we started until July, we would go live and we would ask people to support in any way a certain project, whether it was the repointing of the church tower and the donations were incredible because, you know, in order to maintain this part of England's heritage,
people were incredibly generous.
Incredibly generous.
And the wonderful thing about those videos is they're still there. In fact, there's probably an old tour playlist on our channel.
Oh my gosh,
that you
we
can
should
go
do
to.
that. Yeah,
and they're pretty cool.
So, do you think that having that became really successful, and everybody from around the world really enjoyed it? Whatever their time zone was, they would get a cup of tea and do it. And I think for you and I, we realized that this was working. I know that was the inspiration for what we're doing now. But did you ever imagine that YouTube was and Patreon was the way forward? And what were your thoughts around moving a historic house that traditionally probably shied away a little bit from social media? You know, we do traditional.
I don't like social media.
Yeah, but
she's the social media girl.
You really started to embrace it.
I did. Well, I did. We embraced the video.
Yeah.
You can't say that I've embraced social media. Don't bother trying to find my social media channels.
No. But I'm talking about Mapperton. No, but I'm Mapperton
but
Estate
on
social
Mapperton
media.
Side.
We have a small historic house. We have quite a big
media.
social media following.
Yeah. So Mapperton social media, absolutely, and that's largely thanks to you, but also thanks to Charlotte, who works in the team on the marketing side.
Yeah.
So I suppose that at that stage, we had learned something really important from the pandemic, which was that if we went out onto YouTube and we gave these tours, there were people who were actually quite interested. And we hadn't really thought about that before.
No.
But I have to say, just to my own surprise, we've ended up in a place that I had been thinking about for some time, which is that I was always conscious, and part of my background was in film and television, that a place like Mapperton has lots of stories to tell. Why does it have lots of stories to tell? Because it's got interesting people and it's got interesting historical elements. And so from a filmmaking standpoint, there's also always beautiful things to look at. There's objects and pictures that have stories, and there are people who weave their lives around these things. And so I'd had in my mind, probably for quite a while, I probably never talked to you about it, this idea that there was something called...
I told you I learned something new
Something
on these
called
videos.
Mapperton TV. And I thought of Julie learning to grow vegetables in the garden, and that would be something. And I thought that, I could be out, meeting with farmers and tenants and talking about livestock, something I knew not very much about. And we could talk about renewable energy and all of... So I suppose there had been something lurking.
Right.
And then we had the success with the live tours through YouTube during lockdown, and we realised actually maybe there was a larger community of people who would be interested in our stories. I think if we jump 50 years from now, things are going to have taken an even more extraordinary turn. And this is where I think with all of our experience from Mapperton Live, we're in quite a good position. So here we go. Here's my big idea. Meta Mapperton. What do you think?
That's the name of Facebook.
Meta Mapperton. Stephen gets it.
What?
You can see he's behind the camera.
Meta Mapperton.
Yeah. The idea is that Mapperton enters the metaverse. Yeah.
I don't even know what the metaverse is.
She doesn't know what the metaverse is.
Well, I do.
And so we could have virtual visitors sitting where Stephen and Claire are now today.
Okay.
And we
Like
could
you
have other
beam them
ones
in.
over there. Well, they beam it. Well, we're all wearing wonderful VR and we're all looking at each other and we're in a Mapperton environment, but it's a sort of
I don't like it.
virtual
Stephen's
real.
saying no.
You're-
Okay.
you're-
I'm going to
you're
move
put
on
off
to
that
my
one.
last question.
And I think
See, I told you. I knew there was going to be a
Meta
point
Mapperton
that he was going to kind of go off piste.
is the future.
Right.
I'm sure
We're gonna
Stephen secretly
remember?
agrees with me.
So we're going to go on to question number 5, the last question. Lucky for you, lucky
I'll
for
bring
me.
it back
No,
to
it's-
that.
So here we are. Last question. So we've now moved past the pandemic, hopefully, and we've established our YouTube channel, Mapperton Live. We've established an amazing platform, Patreon, where our patrons help to support us in the repairs and restorations here, in particular the 18th century, no, it's the 17th century pool now, we think, and the repair of the 17th century pool. So our patrons really do help in certain projects that we have here at Mapperton. They're always ongoing. I mean, one day I will get those tapestries done, but there's some projects above that. So I do want to say thank you to our patrons. Never in a million years would we've ever sort of imagined that we would be able to do something like this, and so that everybody can enjoy and feel that they have a part of Mapperton.
Well, and they really do, because the lovely thing about our patron community, and please consider joining, it's patreon.com/Mapperton. We can probably put a little QR.
Mapperton Live /Mapperton Live.
Oh, you're quite right. I got that wrong, didn't I? /Mapperton Live. But if you don't want to type, you can probably QR code it in the corner. And the lovely thing about that is we've got a wonderful community of people, and we interact with them. We post things, we answer questions. Some of our community are even getting to know each other outside of Mapperton Live.
Brilliant.
And arranging to talk and possibly even meet in person.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant.
It is brilliant. Here we are, 2022, and we're busier than ever.
Yeah.
And you've really moved on to sort of the traditional historic house projects, if you like, in developing the estate. But what are you the most excited about in the near future? I'm giving yourself 2 to 3 years here. Where do you see Mapperton evolving in a particular area?
So there are 2 really interesting Mapperton worlds at the moment. Not quite the meta Mapperton that I was talking about.
Thank goodness.
But we've got the digital Mapperton world, which is this world of YouTube and Patreon. And I can't pretend that I don't find this exciting, because I really do. It combines so many things that interest me: telling stories, building a community, filmmaking, hanging out with you.
That's
what
nice.
could be better?
I
So that's the sort of digital side. So that really gets me up in the morning thinking about that. The other one, of course, is what's happening beyond the house itself with Mapperton Wildlands. MappertonWildlands.com. If you haven't been to the website,
Oh, yes.
please go.
Oh my gosh, it's just launched. That's so exciting.
And Mapperton
Brilliant.
Wildlands, as people who've been watching the channel will know, is our rewilding project. And that's really just taking off and blossoming at the moment. And I think what's so interesting about that is that it because I'm mid-sentence. You can't quite shut me down yet. What's so interesting about that is it represents the next stage of the evolution of the country house and estate, which is that we've brought visitors into the centre, into these houses. But I was having a fascinating conversation with Tim Connor, who's a local historian today, and he
who wrote the book.
Wrote the Mapperton book, which you should also get if
Link
you haven't
down
already.
below.
He was saying that he thinks that the traditional visit to a country house, where you go and walk around, you have a guided tour and you have a cream tea, he thinks that's a very 20th century idea. And of course, it's probably going to continue. People are going to enjoy that for many years to come. But he thinks that actually part of what's going to be happening over this next period is people's access to the countryside. Because that access hasn't been available, because a lot of this land has been farmed and it hasn't been appreciated for all the wonderful things that it does for wildlife and biodiversity and carbon sequestration and water quality and air quality, but most importantly, human connection with nature. People are increasingly wanting and valuing that connection, and we are providing a way for that to happen. So we're just at the start of that, and it would be really interesting in 10, 15 years to look back and see what that's meant to people and how it's also helped us, because it generates income to support all those leaks, those roofs,
That's right.
those repairs.
Well, I think it's, honestly, it's wonderful just to see how Mapperton has really, really evolved from when I first came here 20 years ago. And then, of course, when we started running it.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Because Julie's just wrapping up at the moment. This is like a sort of outro. But
What's wrong with
before
that?
she does that, I think we need to give her some credit. Because a lot of these changes just wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for you. Not only is she a superstar in front of the camera, with her own previous series on historic houses. But you're just full of energy. People get so excited when they know Julie's coming down because, I don't know, you just sort of lift people's spirits. Where I'm a bit doom and gloom.
No, you're not.
But
thank you.
But I think, and you're going to think about the other things that we've done here. So, for example, yoga retreats.
Yes.
I mean, we've converted lots of bedrooms and bathrooms in this house. We'd never have done that if it wasn't for the income that we get from yoga retreats. So those are supporting as well.
And it's really nice to be able to bring yoga here. It's my passion, and yoga in the historic house you never really saw before. I do feel that I was one of the first. I think I might be the only sort of yogi with a title that lives in a historic house.
We did come across one or two others. We won't say who they are. They're not as good as she is, and they can't do that funny thing where she stands on her hands.
It's called a handstand.
But when your legs then sort of twist backwards over your ears.
Oh yeah, crazy
and you end
stuff.
up in a sort of strange. Stephen can probably show a picture of that because why not? We can show it off. Anyway, I think we're probably at the wrapping up stage.
We are the wrapping up.
And I'll pat you on the back, and you've patted me on the back.
Yeah, that was nice.
And here's to the next 25 years
Here's to the
of
next
Mapperton.
25 years
20?
Of Mapperton.
15.
And I think we should do a video like this
in 25 years. We'll come in on our Zimmer frames.
Every year.
So these are questions for Julie. And they're about marrying me. They're not kind of intimate marriage questions, but they're questions about what it's like to marry into a family like this.
Don't get cross with me about this.
Oh dear.
No. It's...
Oh dear, I can feel it rising already.
There's one word that comes to mind.
Yeah.
This family is bonkers.
Bonkers?
Bonkers.
A couple of weeks ago, Julie really surprised me because we sat down in the hall and I thought we were just having a nice cup of tea and a chat. And then suddenly she puts the spotlight on me and asks me 5 tough questions. And they were quite tough.
They were, because I didn't tell you beforehand what questions
they were.
I was asking you.
So I thought, I'll get her back.
I knew this was coming. I knew this is what
you knew,
was happening
exactly.
today.
It's more than I knew, isn't it? The fact that you knew this was going on.
Well, I think I was just going to ask you a couple of questions, and then it turned into sort of 5. Because they sort of built on one another.
They built one another. Well, you know what? I'm going to start off thinking that I'm going to ask her 5 questions because I prepared 5 questions. 5 difficult questions. 5 revealing questions. They're not kind of intimate marriage questions, but they're questions about what it's like to marry into a family like this.
I thought you were going to ask me like easy ones, like what do you miss from America?
No,
what was it like growing up in America?
What's your favourite American cereal? Where did you first work?
Lucky Charms. Lucky Charms.
Okay, so here's the first question. I remember driving Julie down to Mapperton the first time and her meeting my parents. Mm-hmm. That is a funny story.
That is a funny story.
What did you think when you first came here?
There's one word that comes to mind.
Yeah.
This family is bonkers.
Bonkers?
Bonkers. Bonkers. You have to remember that I was this all-American girl 3 months into sort of our courtship that you told me that you had this kind of big house and it was sort of had history. I didn't really know what that meant because I grew up in sort of supersized America. So there's a lot of big houses in America. So when I came here, and I was, I think, just taken aback probably because of the history. And I think in my own head, I thought, well, he's got a big house. It's probably like a new build. Do you know what I mean? It's all like modern, a new build.
Mapperton
and it's,
new build.
I'm sitting on, this is 300 years old. I'm certain of this, almost, this sofa here. So it's older than my country. I met his parents in a wood.
In a wood,
basically.
in the middle of the night.
And we would say in America, we'd say in the woods. They say over here, in the wood.
In the woods. But you still...
We'd say in the woods. So we met in the woods in the middle of the night, really. And we were all helping to carry something. And
a log. A large log. We needed my parents' help.
We needed his parents' help. And that was the first time I met them. And we literally had like conversation
You bonded over a log.
Over this enormous weight. And I was being, asked questions while we're all carrying this enormous weight of a log. And it was asking me questions like where I'm from and,
She did okay.
Yeah.
She got most of them right. I mean, not all of them, but I think you got most of them
But
right.
that is, can you imagine meeting your in-laws, like in the middle of a wood, as you would say, in the middle of the night? I think they had just come back from a trip or something.
Yeah,
and we're all
it was cold. The heating wasn't working.
And we needed a heavy log.
We needed some wood for the fire. Okay, next question. This is a toughie. What have you found hardest about marrying into my family? And don't mention anything you shouldn't, because there are every family we have.
Do you want me to be truthful here then?
Yeah, I want you to be truthful, but not
lie,
but
basically.
Not
Don't
that
mention
truthful.
anything, but lie. So what have I found hardest? Okay, about marrying into your family. I am going to say this. Don't get cross with me about this.
Oh dear.
No. It's
Oh dear, I can feel it rising already.
it's that I can't come down to breakfast in my pajamas.
Do you know what? That probably is the tip of the iceberg, you see. The pajamas are the iceberg tip, and beneath the surface of the water is an enormous well of resentment about all the things that she can't do that she used to be able to do in America. Is that right?
And by the way, we say pajamas in America, but I have converted to say pajamas because all 4 of our children say pajamas. But anyway.
Pajamas?
Yeah,
What are
pajamas.
they?
Pajamas. PJs.
No one's heard of pajamas.
Yeah, pajamas. So when by the way, so I'll quickly tell this story. When I first stayed in the house here at Mapperton, I did. Breakfast was at 8:30 in the morning. I'll be really British about that, or 8:30. And I remember vividly walking down in my pajamas, and you said to me, "You mustn't do that. You must just go back upstairs."
The idea of coming to
changed.
breakfast in your pajamas
I was
is
terrified.
making me kind of
What have I married
recoil.
into? I can't wear my pajamas
it seems
to breakfast.
Astonishing that you would go to have breakfast in your pajamas. I mean, we would never ever do that. And I'm just amazed.
And we would always do that. It's so wonderful.
Yeah.
Gosh, I kind of miss that.
We do that now, don't we?
No, we don't do that, actually.
She's changed the protocol.
I haven't.
She
I'm
has.
afraid
Okay, next
I
question.
haven't.
Next question. What do you use your title for? And is it useful?
What do I use my title for? Okay, so because our title is so long, I don't even know how many syllables it has. Countess Hinchingbrook. 6 syllables. I mean, it's quite a lot. But I mean, it's just long. It has a lot of letters. I think that's the thing. It's got a lot of letters. So when you try to spell that, even the word Hinchingbrook, takes a long time. Montague is much easier. But what do I use my title for? I think nowadays I only really use my title when I'm reporting on the royals. So when I'm commentating on the royals, the networks do use my title. They will use Viscountess Hinchingbrook. So when I was on the recent CNN Diana series, the CNN original series, they put in Viscountess Hinchingbrook.
But that's about it. Occasionally, and I'm going to jump in here.
I think so.
I've heard Julie calling up the odd restaurant.
Oh,
and thinking,
my goodness.
and
That
thinking,
is such a farce.
I can't get a table.
No. Liar,
I'm going
liar,
to use
pants
my
on fire.
title
I
and
do
see
not-
if that gets me a table.
I do not do that.
That was a test, that one, see if you're going to be truthful.
First of all, I can't do that because even if I did do that, they wouldn't believe me because I have an American accent. Like if I called them like, "Hi there, so I want to book a table for myself and my 3 guests, a table of 4. What's the name under?" "Oh, it's under Lady Hinchingbrook." They'd be like, "Yeah, American accent lady, that is not your title." I can't even get away with it because I don't have a British accent. But what was the second question to that?
What do you use it for?
No, then you said something else on the back of that.
Did I? Oh.
What was it?
Is it helpful?
Oh, so do you know nowadays it's completely not helpful. Do you think it's helpful? I don't think it's helpful. I think we've moved beyond that.
Well, the world has mostly moved on, and I think the first point that Julie made, which is that it's so long, means that it's just impractical. I mean, Luke Montague or Julie Montague is much easier. But for some things like passports and bank accounts, we still have it in there. And then if you go
we have Hinchingbrook in...
There are certain places where you still get called your ladyship or your lordship, but not very many. So that happens very occasionally. But mostly we're just Luke and Julie.
We are mostly Luke and Julie. I'd say 99.9% of the time.
I've got another question for you. What advice would you give to your daughter-in-law if she inherits the title?
Gosh. Okay, my advice would absolutely be this. It would be, don't change who you are as a person unless there are areas in your life that you know you need to work on. And we all need to work on areas in our life, whether that's whatever it is, becoming a kinder person or a more compassionate person. But I think, don't change authentically who you are. So for me, I never changed my accent. And I get words still to this day. I'm laughing because, 20 years in our marriage, he still corrects me on some words that I mispronounced.
I think
I might have mispronounced something today. Oh yes, Ian Forster. Anyway, that's another story.
You also said Viscountesses of Hinchingbrook today.
Yeah, I mean, I get things wrong all the time.
It's fine. Does it really matter? Who's really fussy?
No. I say
who's looking?
En route, and then sometimes I'll say en route.
It's probably one or two people on YouTube who are thinking, shouldn't get that wrong.
In America, I would say en route, and then
en route.
Yeah, he's en route to us.
That sounds ghastly. En route.
And he was en route, right? So but there's so I mean, every day. So, but I would say, take everything with a pinch of salt. So when he tries to correct me, I don't really take it personally or critically. I know you're trying to help me. Help me.
Yeah.
But I think most important is, remember where you came from and be sure to bring in your own family traditions when you're, raising children or, for here, we always have Thanksgiving and always celebrate 4th of July.
It's true.
Yeah.
The American flag flies high and proud in our household.
It does. So I think
we should get one, actually, because we don't have a flag at Mapperton.
No.
We could have a flag. We could have the Montague crest and the stars and stripes.
Yeah, because considering I don't have a coat of arms,
we could create one. I got one more question.
Okay.
So, what attracted you to the aristocrat Luke Montague?
As he puts his arm around me, like, be nice about it. Be nice. Be kind to me.
Stephen knows the reference.
What do you mean Stephen knows the reference?
There was a famous interview once.
Oh, I don't know this.
Mrs. McGee interviewed... No, not Mrs. McGee.
Who's Mrs. McGee?
Oh, what was her name? Debbie McGee.
What? What is this? He goes up on these tangents all the time. He's stealing my limelight here. This is supposed to be questions about me. And here he's going on he's Googling it now.
No. I was trying to remember who it was. It was Mrs. Merton. That's right. Interviewed Debbie McGee, who was the assistant to Paul Daniels. These are all wonderful British names.
Julie
hasn't heard of
Who are any of them?
There were getting loads of British people watching here. Going,
comment down below. That. I don't know.
And Mrs. Merton turned to Debbie McGee and said, so what attracted you to the millionaire Paul Daniels? And it was brilliant. Anyway, you didn't fall for it. So I think we'll let you off that.
Yeah. So do I even need to answer that question?
Well, you could if you wanted to, But
right, so I can.
But we can save it to later.
No, I could, because I feel like if I'm answering it, it's a little bit too personal.
Intimate, isn't it? It's quite intimate, that one. And I wasn't intending this to be intimate.
Then people will think, oh, you're trying to stroke his ego. And
yeah,
I think I'll say this is, having been married to you for nearly 2 decades, I think that sums it up. That's all we need to say.
We don't say something.
It's all good.
Anything too profound. It's all good.
It's all good.
Anyway, thank you all for watching. If you've got any more impossible, revealing, tough questions for Julie,
not too personal, because I don't go there.
Just post them down below, and maybe we'll do a whole series of these. You'll just be constantly,
we
in the spotlight.
We could do a series if you have questions. And we could do a series of what our YouTubers or what our patrons want to know about us and ask the top 5 questions. Actually, that would be a really good series. So if you do have questions or episode, if you do have questions down below, let us know, because we probably will be doing another episode where you, the viewer, get to ask us questions and we will answer them.
In the meantime, if you've made it this far in the video,
Yeah.
the least you can do is press that subscribe.